I'll call the meeting of the October 20th Study Commission to order, please. If we can have the Pledge of Allegiance, or excuse me, a roll call.
Okay, Raylan Brandel, Lori Casey,
Excused.
Dan Dennehy,
He said he'll be late.
Mary McCormick, Cindy Perdue-Dolan, Cindy Shaw,
Excused.
Chad Silk, Matt Steppen, Ben Thielen.
Here.
All right.
Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer, please? Okay, thank you all. First item, public comment on any item on the agenda. Okay, hearing none. Second item, public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Study Commission.
Got to push the right button. Not going to make friends tonight. Auditor Bandrup, 2601 Grand Avenue. Public comment on any item not on the agenda. This ingenuous comment at October 06th Local Government Study Commission meeting. The ex-council commissioner who made that comment is fully aware that a proposal is needed to hold a proper public hearing rather than a listening session. She had ample opportunity at several meetings previous to the public hearing to request discussion on which preliminary proposals should be brought up at the public hearing. Thus, the only one being disingenuous, the only one with a hidden top-down dictatorial government advocate support agenda was the person that made the comment. We will see if this commission has the wisdom, the courage to stand up and create a Butte-Silver Bowl from the bottom-up representative democracy form of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on anything not on the agenda?
Hi, I'm Karen Sargent, 3021 Josephine Street here in Butte. I have 30 years as an emergency first responder, 3 decades worth. 27 years of those I've been a firefighter on 5 different departments, 2 here in Montana. I've participated in structural and wildland fire, medical, and all hazard incidents, including vehicle crashes during those 27 years. These are my certificates that I have achieved in my trainings, okay? They are all professional level certifications from the National Fire Academy, from FEMA, and other national and state organizations and agencies. I have a master's degree from the University of Montana, go Grizz, that I'm very proud of. So all of these certificates, I'm nationally certified. So I can go anywhere in the nation with these certifications. I am nationally certified in hazmat operations, wildland fire suppression, wildland fire finance, public information officer, instructor, and many other smaller topics. During my, I am a professionally trained firefighter in every sense of that word. During the 3 years in Butte, I have shown the career department here in Butte-Silver Bow nothing but respect. I have treated the officers with the respect that I give all of my commanding officers, and I am very versed in the incident command system. In return, in the 3 years that I've been here in Butte, I have received a high level of disrespect and disdain. They don't know about my qualifications because they never asked. And they make assumptions about me that I don't particularly care for. If they ask me, I will be happy to show them and happy to tell them. The reason I'm speaking to you tonight is because there's a simple thing that you could do as the Government Study Commission within your purveyance, and that is to strike every reference to the volunteer firefighters in Butte-Silver Bow out of the charter. It's a simple thing, just a strike-through line. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sargent. Any other public comment on anything on the agenda, but within our jurisdiction? Okay, so seeing none, can I move to approval of the minutes of the meeting held October 6, 2025?
I motion to approve the October 6th minutes.
And being that we have exactly 5 members, I'll take a vote. I mean, that approval and that second, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you for that approval. Motion carries. Correspondence and our study commission update. Ms. Boyd?
So we're just talking about the volunteer log sheets, which I got a few today from you guys. I got some from Cindy Shaw, Mary McCormick, Cindy Purdue-Dolan, and Lori had sent me some. So I just need from the other members that haven't turned those in, they're just requesting that we get those from July until through October for your volunteer logs. And you guys can email that to me too. And I actually have the sheets too, if you don't have them. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, commissioners, for getting that work updated, and I will have mine too tomorrow morning. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. I think it's you again.
Okay, so Mackenzie and I had tried to contact Anaconda Fire and the chief to get some information and have them come and give a presentation or talk to you. I talked to, he's a new fire chief in Anaconda, Corey, I have his name, Corey, and he referred us to the chief executive over there because he's so new, he wouldn't be able to answer the questions, and we have not heard back from their office to give you any more on that in a presentation. And the same with Mako, we tried to get a hold of them to give us information, and they have not returned our calls either. So we're kind of on a standstill on those.
And commissioners, with the Mako update, the information that we were looking for was related to the salaries of paid, part-time and full-time commissioners who are county or city commissioners. And then prior to Ms. Kahn leaving, she did send us that information that she had pulled together. So I think that's a good basis to look at in terms of salaries. And then incidentally, I think there was a notification for a new city manager call for applications out of Helena on LinkedIn, and their rate was something like $110,000 to $130,000 for that position. So we'll continue to try to suss this out to get us good information with regards to the salary amounts and what other counties are doing. Looks like we're kind of limited to what Kim was able to pull together so far. And we're certainly open to other suggestions with trying to find that information. Any other discussion regarding Anaconda or Mako update? All right, moving on, our party line is October 29th, and we had our 3 volunteers from last meeting. It was Dan and Chad and Matt. Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the sign language, I love that. All right, and then moving on to discussion of changing our current timeline and preliminary report due date. I'd like to call Mr. and Ruth up to kind of visit with us a little bit, because part of the change in our timeline and preliminary report was thinking about ballot questions, number of ballot questions, and then what needs to be included in terms of either recommendations or things that we would put forward to voters. And he's completed his research, so if he could kind of update us, I'd appreciate it.
Council members, I'm going to stand down here so no one has to look at the back of my head when they're talking to me. Yes, Chairwoman Brandel is correct. We were able to decipher what can and cannot go on the ballot. That was through pulling the old statutes out of the old case law books and things like that. So nothing has changed. However, the way they worded the law back in 2006 and 2004 gave us some clarity. So specifically, when you're looking at the three question rule that everybody's got in their head right now, when you look at the law on that, it specifically states that ballot requirements and the treatment of sub-options on an alternative form or plan of government recommended by a study commission is limited to 3 options. There can only be 3 questions on the ballot that relate to the form of the government. So that means whether or not you want to do, you're going to recommend a mayor-style form, how many commissioners are associated with that form, the number of years those commissioners would serve. So when you go back and look at that email chain that I provided you from Ravalli County, if you look at the questions that they were asking, that's what they all relate to, the form of the government. How many commissioners there will be, their terms. So that is limited to 3. However, if the commission wants to review those other little parts of the charter, Mr. Peterson and myself and a couple other attorneys have determined that based on the case law and the Attorney General opinions, those are not limited. However, I would recommend limiting them because obviously you have a limited amount of time. So when you look back at the certificate that was establishing the official ballot for the Butte-Silver County special election, what they did with that first one where they had 7 on it, if you look at the questions they asked, none of them related to the form of government. Question number 1 was, for the adoption of the amendments to the Butte-Silver Charter, deleting transitional language, clarifying out-of-date references, and adding limited stylistic changes to our charter. They did that under 1 question. It was provided to the citizens of Butte-Silver what changes were going to be made, and that was allowed. In addition to that, if you're looking at, they had the auditor in there, they had some human resources stuff, but none of those questions directly related to the form of the government. So you get 3 cracks at the apple with regards to form of the government. So what that is going to include, off the top of my head, is going to be number of commissioners, years they're going to serve, when they're going to start, what type of government, if any, this commission chooses to recommend, that we change our charter to. The issue that Ravalli County had was they broke all of their questions down into individual ones. The best example is the number of commissioners. They were at 5 and they wanted to go to 7, or vice versa, I can't remember. But they said, we want to go to X amount of commissioners, and then we want them to be, elected this many years. Rather than breaking those down into individual questions, we can turn that into 1 question. X amount of commissioners for X amount of years, starting on such and such a date. We just have to make it a nice, clear, easy question. So that way, when we keep it to, we can keep it to 3, and in those 3 questions, obviously, you've got 3 or 4 questions, or not, in the one itself. So if it all relates to number of commissioners, we can present that in one. If it all relates to the form of government, not in the sense of a charter form, but in how the government functions under the charter, we put that in one question. If this commission sees fit to change anything with the coroner, with the fire department, with stylistic changes in the charter, those questions are not limited, in my opinion. That also leads me to something else that you have on the agenda tonight, which is a forensic audit. Specifically, this commission does not have the authority, in my opinion, under Montana law or statute to request a forensic audit. What you have the authority to do is present it to the people of Butte to put in the charter to be done and how you want it to be done. There is already audit information in the charter, which I believe the Director Hassler will probably speak on tonight. But there is an audit procedure already in place. I can go through all of that with you, but yes, you do not have the authority to request a forensic audit, but you do have the authority to present to the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow if they would like one done, and if it becomes part of the charter. I hope that answered a lot of everybody's questions. So now that you can proceed forward with your timeline, present your questions, and then when we look at what you were wanting to put on the ballot, we can determine whether or not that is a question with regards to the form of government or more of a question of just modifying something in the charter that doesn't directly relate to form of government.
Thank you, Mr. Enruth. I appreciate that breakdown for us. And so I want to make sure I've got this captured correctly. So when we're looking at some of those language changes or things that we noticed in the charter that might be difficult because 20 years ago the language was different, those are stylistic changes that we can make without it being in our limited 3.
Correct.
Okay. And then our limited 3 would be things like the city manager, the number of commissioners, full or part-time, and I think that was the 2 that you said, and
Term
then maybe
limits,
the term limits.
things like that that directly relate to the form or function of the government in that manner. Yes.
Okay. And then coroner, fire department, those are in the other section.
Yep, because if you can look at the other ballot questions that were presented that I provided you before, you can see that some of those questions were directly related to that, such as, human resources department be established and maintained. I do community enrichment coordinator, reporting directly to the chief executive. You can remove the coroner from the charter, and there's another section under Montana statute that allows us to use the sheriff's department and people that are specifically able to complete that job through the sheriff's department. So we don't have an elected coroner anymore. We can have an appointed coroner. How many people are in that department? That all goes through the commission at that point in time. But yes, it's, I would say, unlimited in the sense that you can look at all of those things and request to change them. But again, based on your timelines, you're going to have to probably knock it down to, probably I'd say less than 10. Especially since the main part of this commission really has been looking at changing the form of government. Mm-hmm. When you look at the 2 previous study commissions, one had 5, one had 7 questions on the ballot. A lot of, there were no form of government questions in those. So you guys have, a really heavy hand on this side, and then some other changes that you can make here.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for Mr. Enruth? Ms. McCormick?
I just want to clarify that you said that between 5 to 10 non-form changes?
Just a recommendation.
Recommendation, okay.
Yeah,
thank
based
you.
on your guys' timeline, having to get them, out to the public, voting on them, having some good discussion on them. I mean, I can tell you right now, I probably think of the 5 or 6 that everybody's going to be talking about. But the good thing is like, stylistic changes. That's going to be one. And we're, all these are all the stylistic changes that are going to be made to the charter. Please vote yes or no. Similar to the coroner, removing the coroner from an elected position. Now that question becomes a little bit different because we're talking about an elected position going to a non-elected position, and does that directly relate to how our form of government functions? That's a question Sean and I will have to determine and ask, and eventually it will be, presented to the state, and they may have a different opinion on whether or not that goes to one of the 3 questions or one of, the other questions, just, modifying something within the charter. But the nice thing is based on, we went and dug up the old books because that old law is not online. And they just had it worded slightly differently back in 2004 and 2006. And like, well, that makes absolute sense to me. And then going forward, when you look at the way the law relates to itself, where it states that, these alternative forms of government must conform to the petition style, which is not the study commission style, which is the city of Butte presents a petition, this is what we want to change. You're only looking at the three things, the forms of government. You wouldn't get a petition from the citizens of Butte to change the stylistic issues within the charter.
Excellent.
Yes.
Other questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Matt, to your point about forensic audit versus audit, that can be one of the other forms or other questions on the ballot that's not included in form, and a ballot question for addition to the charter, adding the word forensic, because you said the audit's already in there, and those are two very different things. So that could be on the other list, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can, just for the simplification purposes, form of government questions,
Yeah.
general questions.
Okay.
And yes, I would say that would be a general, one of the general questions that you could add to the charter under the audit section itself, because right now the commission has the authority to request an audit. I believe an audit is actually normally done in general because of the way a forensic audit works. It's a whole different beast, and so that could be a section in there how the commission wants to word it. Whether it gives the Council of Commissioners authority or whether it's mandated every so many years, that is completely up to this commission.
Thank you for that. Just a quick follow-up, if I could. Just to say, we're still getting information, so we're hopefully going to get that and figure out that additional group of questions if, we're still working on that. But thank you, Matt.
Yes.
Mr. Steppen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. County Attorney and Ruth, just for clarity, when you use the word options, 3 options, is that to say that when the voters are looking at this, it is option A or option B or option C? Or is there 3 different questions that can be asked to form of government?
Commissioner Steppen, that is correct. It's the 3 different questions. So it will be, you have 3 different questions, and under each question, you have 2 options. And so it's, for example, does this, it is however you want to phrase the question or form it, and there's a specific way you do that. It's in the statute. In fact, actually, I have it right here. It says, the question of adopting an alteration or an existing form of government proposed by a petition shall be submitted to the electors in substantially the following form. Vote for 1. It's got a checkbox. For the adoption of X type of government, specific to this local government as proposed by the people, or option 2, keep the existing form of government. And so you get 3 different questions, and underneath those questions is adopt it or not adopt it.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ask you, can we ask a question about timeline, or we just next thing? I just want to ask about that.
Yeah, so rolling into the timeline, we started to look at our reporting structure and then when our preliminary report is due, and wanting more time to deliberate other issues and think about things that were also emerging. And so I drafted a timeline for folks to look at. And then just, Mr. and Ruth, I appreciate your opinion on this to make sure I have it correct. So we were thinking that, as we come forward from tonight, we would start looking at our deliberations on the various issues, and then we would draft that preliminary report. Then in January, we adopt a preliminary report based on what the findings of this group are in terms of, these are the things that we're considering, these are the ones that we would consider to bring forward to the ballot or not. And then we would go through another round of public listening and likely, and very much so, another public hearing. And then at that time, after that public hearing, this commission would then vote on which issues we would want to bring forward to the ballot. Do I have that correct in deliberations?
That is correct. And then the guidelines for that are statutory, and they're very clear, and I'm sure that's what you were looking at. We just have to make sure that we fall within the correct deadlines to be able to get them to the Secretary of State and then on the ballot. And they have their own deadlines as well, because they review and look at the questions that are going to be proposed, the manner in which the questions are presented, to make sure we don't have any issues that need to be modified. But I believe that you are correct there, yes.
And I think that drop dead date is July 7th, where our final report has to be to everybody involved.
I will defer to you on that, because I don't know off the top of my head, but that sounds about correct given what's, looking at how our elections in the state of Montana work and our timeframes. I can tell you that in the research I have done with all of these, setting, a sooner deadline is better, sometime in June, just in case we do have any issues. We can get them submitted, and we have plenty of time to work within that, so we're not running up on any deadlines or missing anything.
Ms. Dolan, did you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want a clarification, and this is probably very rudimentary, but looking this over, for December 25, it says preliminary report drafting and adoption of a preliminary report in January of 26. So I'm guessing that is from the dissemination of all the information we've gotten thus far to put in a preliminary report, and then in February of 26 to go back out to the public and say, here's what we initially came up with. What do y'all think about this? Is there anything we're missing? And let's say someone comes forth and says, hey, I've got this great idea. I haven't done this yet. There is time to squeeze that in if we all, think, oh, this is wonderful. We hadn't even thought of this idea. So there is that wiggle room and chance to do that.
Yeah, I believe so. And that, looking at our timeline too, thinking about that, Ms. Dolan, I wanted to make sure that we have enough time to go back if in those public listening sessions and the next public hearing, we indeed want to change a strategy or add something, we would have time to do that. And this is ambitious, again, because, looking at March to late June to finish that final report is a quick turn, and especially for us to go through another round of deliberations and voting for what goes to the ballot. I think we'd do well to work quickly. Thank you, Mr. Steppen. Is there any other questions, or excuse me, Mr. Andrews? Mr. Steppen, you wanted to talk.
He's balder than I am. You mixed us up.
Any other questions for Mr. Enroot?
And I would just say that I know that you guys have a lot on your plate, and there's a lot that people want to change. But I would, as of starting now, really start look at boiling it down to something in the 5 to 7, 8 range, including your 3 big questions. I think you can fit it in within that amount, and I think then that gives you guys ample time, and it gives my office ample time to also address any issues you want, because there are some heavy hitter topics, even in what we're going to call the general questions, that we want to make sure are fleshed out correctly, done correctly, and then presented to the the citizens of Butte in a manner that everybody can understand, not some complicated legalese question on a ballot. We don't want that.
I appreciate that perspective. I was thinking too, if we had too many things, we might dilute important things. And so that
again,
5 guideline it seems like a good one. 5 to 8 seems good to me as well.
And that's just my personal opinion from, the 10, 15 hours that Sean and I have got, and Deputy County Attorney Sean Peterson and myself have into just reviewing, how these have functioned in the past, what has happened. The nice thing about today's day and age is we are computer-based. Sending things back and forth is no longer through mail, so we are a lot quicker that way. And we can obviously adjust a lot faster as well. So that's just my suggestion based off of, what we've read, and again, based off of the topics that have been brought in front of this commission. I think I could come up with the 8 right now that you're going to be looking at. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to go to football. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to the change in the timeline. In your packets, you have a draft timeline to review, and I would take any questions about that, and then we can have further discussion in terms of if this timeline is going to meet our needs. And then I would ask for us to vote on that timeline and have it republished. I suppose the big changes were in November, we had originally said we wanted to adopt our tentative report. I've changed that to say deliberations and fact-finding on items to be put forward for consideration in the preliminary report. In December, the report drafting is really the work of this body to create that draft report. So giving us time to do that both in meeting and then via subcommittee if needed. And then in January, adopting that preliminary report, so we would bring it back to the body for a vote that this is the report that we'd like to adopt. And then public listening and public hearing, and then moving forward to that final. So Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, this is, where the rubber meets the road. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us to flush out what changes we want to make, to debate those changes, and to write a report, preliminary report. That's a lot of work, and we're going to have to stay extremely dedicated, extremely focused to get that done by January. So I mean, there's absolutely no way in my mind that I could see where we could possibly get this work done by November. We have a lot of discussions, a lot of debate to have among ourselves to, decide what we're going to do. And so I just think it's just imperative that we approve this new timeline.
I had another idea. Thank you, Ms. McCormick. And I had another idea too in terms of how to put guardrails, if you will, or direct our discussion on the deliberations, that maybe we pick a topic or two and take that per meeting. And then it also provides some clarity to the citizenry in terms of we're taking on the issue, for example, of city manager versus chief executive first. And then we're going to deliberate that. People could come and visit and talk about that. And then moving forward in terms of, breaking it down by meeting and issue. I think it could help us direct our work as well. And I would entertain conversation about that, or we could definitely even list those dates out if we want to. So do that as well. Ms. McCormick.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I think it's really about the only way we can move forward efficiently, and that we're going to stay committed to, if we have a topic, the agenda is like the change from chief executive to city county manager, that we stay on point and stay on the topic and just do everything one by one instead of like this. So I think that's excellent, and I very much appreciate your hard work and effort, Madam Chair.
Other thoughts or considerations? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree, Mary, and we've got a lot of work ahead and a lot of tough discussions to have, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. But I also want to say that it has to be in tandem, and it might be a kind of long meetings between now and January, because we're still doing information gathering as well, and we can't put that on the back burner. We have to kind of do it simultaneously with other, information that we can gather and then disseminate and give to folks around Butte-Silver Bow. So, and then obviously at the next round of public listening sessions. I would also mention too, Madam Chair, for the timeline between March 26 and July 26, if we want to maybe make those boxes so we can fill in, because it goes from March to July, but we have April, May, June to do lots of things, just as kind of a housekeeping thing that might be able to easier to plug in things if we need to do it. But yeah, I'm excited about this timeline. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be worth it. Thanks.
Other thoughts or questions? Mr. Steppen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a cause for discussion to look at our frequency of meeting throughout this time?
Yeah, I think.
I didn't want to be the one to ask that question.
No, I think last session we had consensus that we were just still on every week because we weren't quite where we needed to be. And I think that as we come into December with the holiday season, we're probably likely going to have 2 meetings and not 4 based on the calendar and looking ahead at that. So I don't think we need to vote on it at this point. I think that we are on a weekly schedule at this point. Other thoughts? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It might be something that we'll need to discuss down the road because of the holiday season, November and December, to maybe have a work session on a Saturday. I mean, I hate to take people's weekends, but because we're on statutory deadlines and we don't want to, I don't want to miss any opportunity to update the charter or update the ballot questions, potential, and all of it. So just throw that out there. I know that'll be tough, but it'll be worth it.
I think that's actually a pretty good idea to see if we can workshop some of these questions, especially I'm thinking about language that we would want to workshop related to, let's say we have consensus on city manager, and workshopping that might be important because the language is going to be difficult. It's not necessarily all right there. So maybe we can kind of I'll do a poll and see what people are willing to do in terms of a workshopping session where we work together for a few hours, and maybe at the Emergency Operations Center or somewhere that's a little more friendly without the sun in your eye all the time. Okay. Other thoughts or discussion on this timeline? Okay, I would like to get the amended timeline moving forward, so if I could ask for a motion to approve. Mr. Thielen makes the motion. McCormick seconds. All those in favor? Any? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all. I appreciate the circling back to this. It was thoughtful, and I appreciate that process. Okay, moving on to our new business. I did ask our, excuse me.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add 2 things with the unfinished business. I did speak with Fritz Daly about the Superfund coordinator idea that he had. He's thinking about possibly coming up and giving us a short presentation, but he said he'd think about it. So more to follow on that. And then I did speak with Commissioner Dan Haggerty. He's a commissioner over in Jefferson County, and he actually used to be sheriff coroner over in Jefferson County, and he's more than willing to come over here and give us a brief about his role. And I told him it wasn't necessary. He said, I can't really go into budgetary questions. I said, but that's out of our purview, so you're good to go. If we could just learn from you what that entailed as far as work as a sheriff/coroner. So he said that, if we could give him some dates, that would work. And I can follow up with you after the meeting, Annie. How about that? So just wanted to give you those quick updates.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Dillon. You had told me this, and I apologize I skipped. Okay, so moving on to our new business, I did ask that Ms. Hasler come tonight, and she also invited Ms. Lori Baker-Patrick to talk about our discussion of auditing procedures in Butte-Silver Bow. I wanted to hear about auditing as it exists under the current charter or the current charter language. And then if we could, we would move to Mr. Woy and the discussion of the forensic audit. And he requested that we have questions for him, and he would come up to answer those regarding what forensic audit is rather than giving us a presentation. So Ms. Hasler, if I can have you come up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Study Commission. I believe what is on the agenda for tonight is a question regarding Butte-Silver Bow's current audit procedures. I don't know if anybody has any questions before I get started. So generally, what we do is we sign an engagement letter with an auditing firm. Our current independent auditor is Newland and Company. This is the second and final year of our current term under the agreement or contract that we have under our engagement letter. Planning for our audits generally starts pretty early after the end of the fiscal year. So around September, October, we start providing our auditor. They give us a list anyways of things that they require. So we provide a list of claims that we have, which are our invoices that are paid out. High dollar claims, which is any claim over $50,000. They give us a sample of payroll, so different employees, they request payroll records to ensure that we're calculating payroll correctly. We're also required to have a single audit based on our federal awards. Any federal award that falls under an assistance listing of more than $1 million is required to have a single audit, which is a more in-depth audit, but they also audit our other federal funds that we receive by grants. So this starts generally in October, and it goes through December. Our final audit is due to submit for the Certificate of Excellence for the General or Government Finance Officers Association. It's due by December 31st. And then we're also required to forward all of that information on to the State of Montana Department of Administration.
Thank you. Ms. Hasler, questions for Ms. Hasler? So, Ms. Hasler, a quick question. So when you read the charter, looking at that language and the procedures that we have in place, I think the question of the forensic audit is trying to get at transparency and looking at, how does a person in Butte-Silver or a voter know how their tax dollars are being spent? Can you maybe speak to that a little bit? Like, how would I access information to know?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I have to say that all of our financial information, our audits, our financial statements, everything is available online. Through our regular processes, we have segregation of duties. So there are several levels of review as well. So if there is a question about something, an expenditure, or how a department is spending money, it goes through several levels of review internally before the claim is paid. So if you have something that is coming through Public Works, an invoice is reviewed by the Director of Public Works and signed off on before it comes to the Finance and Budget Office to be approved, before it goes to a subcommittee of the Council of Commissioners, which is the Finance and Budget Committee, for approval. So it goes through several layers of review before it is approved. All of the expenditure lists are also provided online every single week. So if somebody were interested in seeing how local government funds were spent, it is completely available every week, every expenditure report. We also have our audit book. It's called the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or the ACFR. That is produced as part of our audit. I believe that there's copies up there on the commissioner's desk if anyone would want to look at them. It's 400 pages of information. It's a lot to digest. And so if anybody were to have any questions, first of all, I guess they could contact us. We don't have very many members of the public call and ask questions about why we paid somebody X amount of dollars. I think that the best place for somebody to start would be the expenditure list, because it talks every week. It gives by department and by fund how much money is being spent and to who.
Thank you. Commissioners, any follow-up questions for Ms. Hassler? Go ahead.
I guess I do have a question, maybe for you to answer. When I was contacted by Madam Chair Brandel about discussion about forensic audit, I just want to make sure that I understand what the intent is here. Because a forensic audit, by definition, is a specialized examination of financial records to uncover evidence of fraud or misconduct. It involves a detailed examination and evaluation of an individual's, organization's, and financial records. The primary goal is to derive evidence that can be used in a court of law or other legal proceedings. Forensic audits are typically conducted when there is suspicion of fraud, embezzlement, or other financial crimes. And so by saying forensic audit, it implies that perhaps there is some suspicion of misconduct or misuse of funds by the local government. And so I guess I would just like to know if that is the intent.
Thank you, Ms. Hassler. I'm information seeking to understand what our procedures are within county government that exist already. I think last meeting we did have some sidebar conversations between the membership about what we meant by forensic audit. Mr. Dennehy brought that up. I think I also did. And then tonight, Mr. Thielen had invited Mr. Woy to describe what forensic audit is. I can only speak for myself. I don't have any intention of looking for evidence of wrongdoing. I think we're trying to determine transparency, at least from my perspective, but I'll open it up to Mr. Thielen, who has his hand up.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, Karen, it's nothing that is pointing a finger at anybody. There's certain criteria, from what I understand, that needs to be gone through before there can be a forensic audit. And the reason I asked Mr. Woy to come up, excuse me, is because everybody's kind of in the dark about it. So Mr. Woy is going to explain to us the nuts and bolts of how that works, if you would. So it's nothing other than what people in the community are asking for. So it's not pointing a finger at anybody.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, what Ben said, but also in our conversations and discussions about going from part-time commissioners to full-time commissioners and possibly going from chief executive to city manager, we understand as a study commission that the decisions made here have budgetary consequences. And so when Ben brought up the forensic audit idea, and actually I think we discussed this last week with, it would go hand in hand or in conjunction with what we're doing. So because a lot of people follow up with us when, oh, thank you, Matt, with, those possible changes and the fact that they do have budgetary consequences. The next question people have is, how are we going to pay for it? So the idea of a forensic audit will showcase, and I think Mr. Woy can explain to us the intricacies of that, but also to say we might be able to find money, move money around, and again, this is out of our purview, this will be for the Council of Commissioners, but if we're able to go through a forensic audit and see where all the money is and where it's sitting right now, and it may be something where the Council of Commissioners can say we can maybe move money around and hopefully make it closer to budget neutral. So that's the impetus, nothing like somebody's doing something wrong. No, this is just an idea of where's the money, how much money do we have, is that, with what we're doing, making it easier in 2026, 27, and 28. Hope that is helpful.
Go ahead, Ms. Hassler.
Yes, thank you for the explanation. I also spoke with our independent auditor regarding this request for a forensic audit and the former budget director of Danette Gleason. Forensic audits are generally very limited in scope and they are used when you find an irregularity that you're looking for something in a very specific area. They're not broad and overarching across the whole general government. It would be very time-consuming and very expensive. And so that was my question, why I was asking about the definition of a forensic audit is because it is very limited in scope, not something where you can look at the whole government in a timely and cost-effective manner.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and to answer that statement is the fact that, we've been talking about how AI has made things a lot quicker. And yes, forensic audits, and again, Mr. Roy can speak to this because I want to learn as well. But the idea that things are much quicker with computers and AI to disseminate all that information a little bit more quickly. But the cost question is a good one, and hopefully Mr. Roy can illuminate the costs involved in that. But one follow-up question for you, Karen, is when you do a regular audit and the auditors, the independent auditors, they're just making sure that all the numbers add up to what you say they were, you give them your documents, and they just make sure everything adds up, all the boxes are correct, and everything's copacetic, there's not anything missing. Is that correct?
Thank you. No, that's not what they do entirely. For our federal awards, they have to ensure that we spend the money according to what is allowable and unallowable in our award documentation. We also have limits on what we can spend general fund dollars for versus enterprise dollars. We don't just print out the financial statements and they say, oh, yep, this matches, and we're going to move on to the next thing that's more in depth.
So kind of circling back to, I think there was some discussion about adding the words forensic audit to the charter, because we did discuss last week too that it wasn't in our purview to request a forensic audit, that would be something that the Council of Commissioners requests. But then we moved on to discussing the language in the charter as being adding those words to the charter, or adding some layer of forensic auditing to the charter. And I think tonight is partially about investigating if that's necessary, needed, and then also what maybe the cost consequences are of that. And then, so I appreciate you bringing forward those pieces of information for us. Are there any other questions from Ms. Hassler? And then if not, I'm going to go ahead and have Mr. Boy come up and we'll ask some questions related to his expertise with forensic audits in particular. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hassler. Just take a hot seat because you might be back. Thank you, Mr. Way.
I'm a CPA, retired, but I spent 40 years auditing for a firm in Butte, Anderson Zemulin. I also teach up at Montana Tech auditing, and I've been doing that every year since 1988. So I have a great deal of understanding and how to communicate to people what a financial audit is and what a forensic audit is. And what I've heard tonight, I'm impressed. Cindy's definition of a forensic audit was right on. Everything she said was exactly what one would say if you could describe for me a forensic audit. Would it be how commissioner? Are you guys referred to as commissioners, or Miss Dolan? Cindy, she was absolutely right as well by bringing up AI. In today's audit world, technology allows far more what I would call detailed investigation of particular areas within, say, a budget office. Specifically, as I heard Cindy mention earlier, yes, she would think one of the first starting points would be expenditures, payments made out and using taxpayer dollars. But I really do not believe that a forensic audit makes any sense at all unless there has been some kind of allegation of fraud or misuse of funds or non-compliance. But I just will tell you that there's just, it would take almost some type of a allegation, like a whistleblower, someone who would come forward and say, we believe there's a problem here in this area. A forensic audit would be considered a reasonable way of determining the degree of that allegation.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, Jim, so what you're saying, it'd take a whistleblower or somebody to come and say something about that, but also at the same time, couldn't it be a protection? Couldn't a forensic audit protect the county or certain departments or all of them?
It would be just very expensive to conduct such a wide-scale forensic audit, because really what a forensic audit does is it really drills down to the real specifics surrounding the allegation of either mismanagement of funds, fraudulent activities, non-compliance with federal, state, local ordinances and regulations. I can assure you that I would never recommend that there be a quote-unquote forensic audit over Butte-Silver Bow. It would only come to pass, in my judgment, if there had been a certain allegation, a concern being raised. What I really encourage the commission to consider is utilization of what is out there in terms of audit software and other forms of AI, artificial intelligence, to rapidly go in and decipher mass amounts of data that you don't, in the old days you would have to hire 20 auditors to sit in a room and do this all, pen and paper. And with today's technology, you can get a little better understanding of where your dollars are going, where they are coming from. But I do feel that the term forensic is probably not the term I would be using, given everything I've heard today. I would just say more of and if I could just go back to what Cindy said about the normal audit. A normal audit, okay, that is conducted annually, and Butte-Silver Bow undergoes an annual financial audit. An annual audit is simply where the auditors come in and form an opinion over the financial statements of the county. And they're very complicated financial statements. The citizen in this city and county don't understand those financial statements. They're very complicated. I mean, I taught local and state government accounting for a number of years, and I had second and third year college college kids that couldn't understand fund accounting. And now we're asking, and they've taken all the various accounting classes up to the point they were taking my class, and I can assure you, it's not an easy thing to really read and understand. But the auditors that come in and audit, they have one objective, and that is to form an opinion that those financial statements are stated in accordance with government accounting principles. And when it comes to federal grants, they form an opinion on compliance, Butte-Silver Bow's compliance when they are, actually working those grants and spending the grant money. But it has, that type of auditing is not what, in my opinion, would be an objective of this commission, who wants to kind of get a broader view of where the budget dollars are coming from and where they're going. And I think deploying some AI would be something that could be done very cost effective, but yet not specifically based on allegations of any kind of wrongdoing, unless there is, you know. And again, I don't know, but so that's kind of how I would see it.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jim. This is very interesting. And so let me ask you this question. If folks in Butte-Silver Bow and the Study Commission want to know, have a better sense of all the money that's out there, and to the point in the question of, you know, doing these questions that have budgetary consequences, like commission number changing, full-time, part-time, those kinds of questions, is there some process for transparency that we can do in utilizing this audit software? What does that look like to have the different departments in Butte-Silver Bow access that and do that process? But then again, we'd be asking them to do something in addition to what they're doing currently. Can you give us a sense of what that is and take the word forensic out of it?
Right, I would definitely take the word forensic out of it. But what technology today in 2025 allows auditors to do is to look for anomalies within particular, you know, we could just say particular departments here at Butte-Silver Bow. You've got the road departments, you've got various different departments, and with the ability to utilize this technology, auditors are able to, you know, put so much less effort in scanning and reading these documents, but rather get exception reports on, you know, things that don't seem to make sense, if there are any. It's really trying to get into the heads of the commission to say, what is it that you really want to, you know, show the citizens that by making these recommendations, this could affect the budget in this way. I just, you know, without giving it some thought, I don't know how that would be developed, but I can assure you technology today is amazing. And you talk about the years that I studied and went through auditing, actual audits. We used to spend hours and hours on projects that today can be done in minutes. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. But I get a sense of kind of where you're heading, because I asked Ben when I first offered to come up, I said, why are we talking about a forensic audit? Quite honestly, is that part of your purpose? I just don't think the word forensic audit should be here.
Thank you, Mr. Boy. Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. Well, Jim, thanks for that, because you've enlightened me, and you know, the people that have been asking me about that, I can surely relate that to them. And so a forensic audit would definitely be off the table as far as you're
I
concerned.
believe from everything I've heard, I surely don't want to say it's off your table. I just would say, from my understanding, and I think Cindy said it so well, she basically read you the definition. Now in the real world, I've been part of forensic audits, and I've been involved for purposes of not just wrongdoing, but allegations of noncompliance with various contracts or divorces, some pretty big divorces where you have marital assets and you've got people one side in the divorce wanting to hide assets from the other side in the divorce, and so you have forensic, you know, it's all about how you interview. It's all about how you set up risk assessment to get down and then write a report that could basically stand up in court. You heard Cindy talk about it. Ultimately, the purpose is to present a report that could be basically brought into the courtroom and held up with some confidence.
Okay, quick follow-up.
Yeah, just to correct the record, it's Ms. Hasler, it's Karen, I think is who you're referring to.
Who have I been saying?
It's okay.
Cindy,
Oh, Cindy,
Karen.
I
sorry.
just want to make sure that Ms. Boyd is getting the right reference.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
No, okay. Mr. Thielen, follow up?
That was pretty much it.
Thank you. So, Mr. Way, I appreciate you coming up and adding your expertise to our conversation. To kind of capture this, I think I understand where we're coming from in terms of wanting to understand the fiscal impact or potential fiscal impact if we make changes that are related to offering salaries. And I think we've had this discussion before too, in that in some ways that's not our job or even in our purview. But in terms of educating the public and helping them understand what could be a fiscal impact of their vote, likely we would need to do some research and investigation, and I would turn it back over to the team sitting at the back of the room to help us maybe understand what that process might look like if we could.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, Mr. Boyd did mention that there are audits of financial statements and our single audit. Up in our comprehensive report or our financial statements, there's actually a third audit opinion letter in there, and it's on internal controls. So internal controls talks about how we function internally, the controls, the segregation of duties that we have that ensures the safety of our public funds. So we monitor the expenditures. The treasurer's office accepts the funds. We have the clerk and recorder's office that pays out the funds. We have different people collecting money that are reconciling the bank accounts. And so we have all of these internal controls to help ensure the safety of our public funds, which we received an unmodified opinion, which is a good. It sounds unmodified as kind of a, people hear that and they think, what is that? But that word means that we are in compliance. The other thing that we would have to do, as you had mentioned, is we would have to look at, what we currently expend for commissioners' wages, what it would look like to employ commissioners, how many full-time. If you're talking about additional auditing, we would have to look at, what type you ultimately decide, or the public ultimately decides that they would want. If it is something that is an AI program, what does that look like? That's not anything that, we currently use. We don't know of any other local governments that are currently using it. So putting a price tag to that, would just take a little bit of, data collecting on our part. I also wanted to mention, we talked about engagement of the public and how they want to know how our public dollars are spent. We have several different documents out on Butte-Silver Bow's website. One is called the performance budget that specifically lists by department, by fund, by function, by department, how those dollars are spent. In our financial statements, it also talks about tax dollars. It's broken down by function and also by fund, if it's spent on public safety, public health, public works, social and economic services. It's all out there for people to digest. It's so complicated, because we are county and city combined. It's a lot of information, but people have to either ask where to get the information, ask how to decipher the information, but it's all there for people to see. We're completely transparent. We don't have anything that isn't available to the public. It is complicated, I'm not going to lie, but in the financial statements, in the annual comprehensive financial report, there's a section called Management's Discussion and Analysis, or MD&A, that breaks all of that information down. And it might not be something that you want to read at 9 o'clock before you're going to bed, because you have to be really interested in it to keep engaged. But that's, if we're talking about engagement with the public and them wanting to know the information, it's out there.
For the record, too, I've personally benefited from both you and Ms. Gleason, who was the former you, and Treasurer Baker Patrick, in helping me to learn our budgets and looking through that performance budget. And it is rough, but it's doable. So can I ask you a hypothetical, and it's okay if you can say you don't have an answer to it. Let's say that we come through this process, we want to have 5 full-time commissioners, and we want to pay them a grand salary of $100,000. I don't know, I'm just making this up. That's totally not that, I'm just making it up. What would the process be? Would you go investigate and kind of look at where we could pull from, or would you have a fiscal note for that, or would that be something the commissioners would direct? Could you maybe walk us through how we would possibly answer that question? I think it's mostly on the commission to find the money if the voters decide that's what they want. But I think to Ms. Dolan and Mr. Thielen's point here, the voters also want to know if it's going to cost them more tax dollars, if their taxes are going to go up. Do you have a off-the-cuff response to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in our budget process, everything that is administrative regarding the county generally comes out of general fund dollars. So your county attorney, your finance and budget office, chief executive's office, council of commissioners are all funded by tax dollars. And so it would be ultimately it's the chief executive's budget that becomes the council of commissioners budget. It would be at their pleasure to determine where the money was coming from. If they didn't take it from somewhere else, it would be an increase in the amount of dollars that would have to be levied to balance the general fund.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that, Karen. Good, really good information tonight, and learned a lot. But my question is with regard to going back to the transparency question and process. It sounds like, and again, hypothetically, it sounds like maybe to add to our list, because we have the ideas of trying to figure out what's going to be on the ballot, and then a list of what recommendations we can give to the county commissioners for different things that may or may not need a ballot referendum from the voters to vote on. But maybe and I want to get your opinion, to possibly ask the Council of Commissioners on our list of recommendations to utilize AI in audit software to help you. The only reason I'm saying that is because I used to be a Council of Commissioners commissioner, and going through those performance budget and the line item budget, I mean, this is huge. This is how big our budget is. And it's not only intimidating, but it's very difficult. As a former commissioner, I would spend hours and hours with a highlighter trying to figure it out. So it's really hard to get that information. Just to be honest, it was really, really difficult because I'm not a numbers person, to try and digest that and figure out what those numbers meant. So I'm trying to figure out a way, and the reason this all came up is to try and get that transparency to the voters, or the residents of Butte, because they're trying to figure out where does all our money go. So that's kind of the impetus for that.
Sure. And I thank you for that comment. Again, I have to point back to those other documents that they're not the line item budgets. They're not just lines of numbers. It's a discussion. It's management's discussion and analysis that is written like a book that talks about our tax dollars, our non-tax dollars, how we spend our money, where we spend our money by fund and by function, and by object, which is it payroll and benefits? Is it operations and maintenance? Is it capital? Is it debt service? There's lots of good explanation in there that isn't just lines and lines of numbers that may help people understand more thoroughly about how our finance works here.
Other questions for Ms. Hasler? And I see Mr. Woy would like to add. Go ahead and come to the microphone, please.
I think this would be kind of an interesting real-life example. So we were hired about I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago by Northwestern Energy. Actually, it was the Montana Power, and it was Western Energy. It was right at the after the implosion of that particular utility. But there was a time when there was a pipeline, a fiber optic cable being built from from Portland, Oregon to Denver, Colorado. And there are all these subcontracts that had overtime pay, they had per diems, and every union that they were utilizing as part of the manpower to build this fiber optic cabling system was there were just all these different contracts. And I know, contracts can be complicated, but we created a database and a mask, and we scanned in all these subcontracts, all these agreements, these union agreements, and we queried it for, any oddities that were, the contract said they would pay X per diem, and the billing, and then we put in all the bills from these subcontractors, and we found significant discrepancies. They were paying way more than what the contract stipulated, the subcontract stipulated, and it was because they were being inundated at the utility company with all of these subcontracts. They were just paying them without doing a real good job of verifying that the invoices were in agreement with the underlying subcontracts. It would have taken weeks and months to do this manually. Once we built the software and the mask and fed all that information in it, we got the answers where several $100,000 was actually found to be overbilled on this work between Portland, Oregon, and Denver, Colorado. So as an example, that's the utilization of technology, and CPA firms are applying this technology, and I don't know if Karen has ever asked the audit firm if they are utilizing like IDEA software for certain types of audit procedures, but it's out there, and again, it's just identifying where you might want to try to get a handle on where the budget dollars are going, and it's just an example, but that's what I wanted to clarify. I did also want to make one comment too on the comment Karen made about the third type of an audit. She's right. The compliance audit of the federal funds, we form an opinion on compliance with internal controls that go into their administration of the grants. However, we give a negative assurance on overall internal controls, like over general fund expenditures and proprietary funds and enterprise funds. We don't form an opinion on internal control, but we give negative assurance by saying nothing has come to our attention during the course of our financial audit to indicate that there is a problem. And if we see significant deficiencies in internal control or material weaknesses, we would communicate those. But we don't form an opinion, other than we do form an opinion on internal control as it relates to compliance with federal expenditures. Just wanted to clarify that third type of compliance audit. Okay?
Thank you. Are there other questions to kind of wrap this, Mr. Steppen?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And this is for Karen. And I think you asked it, but I'm not sure that I heard the answer that I was maybe hoping for. And first, this was extremely helpful and enlightening with respect to terminology and objectives of audits. And I think that I hope the people are listening to where they can find the information, because I think that's sometimes the biggest challenge is understanding where they can find it. I think as long as you have a free democracy, people have opinions on whether any particular administration's prioritizations of funds are right or not, but it was extremely helpful. The question that I have is, if we are looking at scenarios, say going from part-time commissioners to full-time, can your office help us with what the budget implications would be so that we can, and I understand that that's a tough balance for us, that it's may not be our objective or our prerogative, but I think it's helpful to understand what the total budget implications, even if it's the commissioner's responsibility to make it happen, if that makes sense. But
Sure.
Is that the appropriate place, is through the budget office to get those implications?
So, thank you, Mr. Steppen. Yes, it would be, especially in regard to, a change in the number and pay of the commissioners. We have their current pay as well as calculated benefits. It would be just a matter of determining how many and at what pay scale, and then we could determine the associated benefits that go along with that.
But for clarity, that would be just what the note of that change would be. It wouldn't be whether or not there's other monies that could be moved around. That's in the Council of Commissioners' purview, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, we would not, that is not, at our discretion where they would find the money. If they determined that they needed to raise additional tax dollars to fund those positions, I mean, we could say how much in additional tax revenue, but it would not be, our place to say where that money would come from. That would be their decision.
Mr. Thielen?
I'm sorry, that's as Dan said, and he's not here to defend himself, but he had stated before, if we find something, it's up to the commissioners to find where that money comes from. It's not up to Ms. Hassler.
Yeah, it's not very satisfying because we might have ideas of where things could be moved around, but truly it's not our duty, nor is it our purview to find it. So the answer is not satisfying to folks. We'd have to say it will cost this much, and we leave it to your commission to figure out where to balance that budget.
That's correct.
All right, Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to both of you, and Karen and Mr. Roy, for coming up tonight, and for all of you in the back for also taking time out to come tonight, because I thought this was really good discussion, and I learned a lot, and yeah, it was really good. So thank you again for coming up, and thank you both for what you do. It's important. And I think, like Matt said, people are going to learn a lot if they tune in to the stream tonight or in the coming days with this meeting to get that information from both of you. So thanks.
Other comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hasler, and I agree. I appreciate everyone's time, and thank you, commissioners, for bringing the issue as well for us to investigate and try to come to some consensus around. And perhaps, Ms. Dolan, to your point that maybe this is a recommendation that we put in for our Council of Commissioners to investigate use of other softwares that could help our budget and our budget officer and our treasurer's office and our auditor's office, everybody. But I appreciate the conversation very much. All right, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to move ahead. We do not have a public hearing tonight, but we do have a public presentation, and because our IT has been scrambling all day with this slowdown from Google and whatnot, we have a printed copy of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation's presentation. So, Mr. Banderab.
It's easier to get here with that. I will give you my name for the record in a bit. Actually, in that a written request was made for time on the agenda. My name, who I am representing, and the complete title of my presentation should already be on the record. I know that you all are in brain dead and in go home mode, but I ask that you please pay attention, listen, and hopefully hear what the people, by not being here, are trying to tell you. What are the goals, objectives, and purposes of a neighborhood community improvement council? For the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., they are seeking common solutions to common concerns for the common good, thus making our neighborhood, our community, a safer, healthier, happier, harmonious, and a more attractive place in which to live, work, and play by working with our local government. What is the level of importance of community councils? Our local government does not have the structure nor system in place for a bottom-up from the government. Oh, hell. Excuse me for missing. Our edited banner up 2601 Grand Avenue. We'll get back to the top of what you got now. For and on behalf of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., a triad of concerned citizens, and 447 petition signatories. Therefore, I must take issue with the statement that just because one person comes up here every week, community councils does not rise to the level of being considered as one of your priority Butte-Silver Bowl charter change issues. No, neighborhood community councils are not included in the Butte-Silver Bowl City Carter County Government Charter. That point was made emphatically made clear in 2014 by the then Butte-Silver Bowl City County Attorney. Therefore, I must also take issue with the statement that neighborhood community councils are already in the charter. Our representative government is intended to be from the bottom up, of the people, by the people, and for the people, based on the principle of doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people form of government. I'll see if I can get the right page this time. Our local government does not have the structure nor system in place for a bottom-up form of government. If you agree with the Butte-Silver Bowl, that Butte-Silver Bowl government should be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then there must be built into the Butte-Silver Bowl Charter a mechanism by which to determine the coalesced will of the people. In that, half of the attendees at your first public hearing were here because of the community council's issue. In that, your first op-ed suggested priority is to encourage the public participation in the actions of our local government. In that, on March 10th, 2016, petitions with 447 signatures of 500 residents of the Greater Butte-Silver Bowl community surveyed were placed on record with the Butte-Silver Bowl Council Commissioners requesting the implementation of a community council system. The 500 sample size and the 447 signatures is well above the 379 needed in a random sample survey of a population of 30,000 to show with a 95% confidence allowance for a plus or minus 5% error factor that an estimated 89% of the total population support the implementation of a community council system. That's much more than one person. Let me repeat that. 500 Butte-Silver Bow community residents were talked to, one by one. 447 were willing to give their address and sign their name, indicating that of a population of 30,000, an estimated 89% of the total population support the implementation of a community council system. It was not a blind internet survey. In that you seem to have as one of your priority issues reducing the number of council commissioners to 6 full-time paid commissioners. And that you can only terminate an elected official by recall ballot. Thus, you are probably going to have 6 districts and 6 commissioners, at least in the transition period. The current Butte-Silver Bow City County Attorney has tried to point that out to you on several occasions. In that to justify, I don't know why you're worried about what it's going to cost. I think you should be worried about justifying it. 6 full-time paid commissioners, as you have been told by at least a half dozen of the present commissioners, you are going to have to stipulate in the charter more responsibilities for the commissioners, in addition to the current powers and duties now designated in the Butte-Silver Bow Charter. In that the major issue in the structure of the local government is that there is not a clearly defined channel for communications between the people and their government. Therefore, I must also take issue with this statement that community councils does not rise to the level of being considered as one of your priority Butte-Silver Bow charter change issues. Given the national polarized situation, the issue of neighborhood community improvement councils and a Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council is a fundamental issue and is at the level to be considered as the first priority issue of the Butte-Silver Bow charter change. No, politicians do not want a system that coalesces or draws together the will of the people. That was clearly articulated here before from both sides. We do not want more bureaucracy. We do not want another level of government. But I must ask, if you are not willing to include a no cost to the taxpayers, let me repeat that, no cost to the taxpayers system of community councils in the Butte-Silver Bow Charter, how else are you going to address this fundamental governmental structure flaw and justify your additional commissioners? Yes, after considering all the major issues, it is up to this commission to discuss and decide which three main government function issues you are going to change, but you might consider that neighborhood community councils are not a government function, but are a part of the government. And then you are going to have to decide what to include in the chamber and the charter changes. I thank you for taking the time to listen to me at the end of the meeting. Are there any questions? I put this on as a presentation so you could ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Banderob. If I could, I'll lead us off. And not to defend the statements made by myself and other commissioners last meeting, but I want to clarify that we were running under the assumption that we could have 3 total questions altogether. And tonight we received different opinion from the county attorney after more research that we can add other pieces to our questions on the ballot, which changes our deliberations a bit in terms of prioritizing which things need to go to ballot and which do not, or which we cannot. So I think, again, speaking for myself, we've all appreciated the idea of community councils. We've reviewed the information in other charters and how other charters are structured to employ community councils as a way to increase public participation. We also have had some conversation regarding that public participation. Like if we are to come forward and request that there's, a mandate of a number of community councils, would we have public participation? Would they be staffed by our citizens? That was a concern that's been raised. We want to make sure that it's effective, that the channel that you're looking for is going to operate well and efficiently, and that commissioners are supported by their community councils and not burdened, I guess you'd say. I don't know how to put it differently, but rather it's an effective use of their time, and vice versa for those neighborhood councils. So I don't think people are again, speaking for myself, in terms of what I've heard from this commission, I don't think people are opposed to the idea at all. We want to make sure that they're effective, and we want to make sure that they're used well. And then if we had to prioritize, we'd have to look at those structural governmental changes that we were talking about tonight with County Attorney Enruth. Like I said, between last week and tonight, things have changed. So we do have more room if this commission wishes to pick up adding language to the charter that further describes how to use those councils, whether or not we put that language in the commissioner's duties and responsibilities, etc. That's stuff that we can all deliberate for sure. So anyway, I guess I'd just like to make that statement for the record and for people listening, and for my fellow commissioners to make sure that I've captured it correctly. Please do ask questions, and we can continue on with the conversation. Mr. Banderob.
I would like to make a comment relative to that. It is obvious that you have not been looking at my emails and communication. You use the word mandate. If you look at what I've sent you, the word mandate is not there. I have read some of the others, and yes, they mandated the number of community councils. They mandated the areas, etc. If you will look at the 14-8 proposal or communication to the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners, it outlines a voluntary form of forming neighborhood community councils. And that was the problem, because we brought it up as neighborhood community councils, and that is not what is in the charter. What is in the charter is the Greater Butte-Silver Bowl Community Councils. If you will look at what I've sent you, you will see a system similar to Iceland's assemblies, a lower local neighborhood council, a assembly of the councils within the district to choose a representative or a delegate to the Greater Butte-Silver Bowl Council. So that is the only one that has a mandate, that procedure. But what you decide to do, of course, is up to you. It also proposes that the commissioners function as the coordinators, that nobody needs to be hired in addition to do the coordinating. The commissioners know their areas. They should be the ones that should be instigating, encouraging, facilitating the community councils or the neighborhood community councils, but they should not have, if you read what I sent you, they should not have a vote, they should not be a participant, but they should be instigators and coordinators at no additional cost to the taxpayers. Any other questions?
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ed, for all of this. And I do want to say on the record, we do read all your emails and we do read everything you send us. At least I do. And I think everyone here does as well. But I want to make one comment and I have a question for you. With regard to the community council system, I think with regard to neighborhood councils within the districts, whatever those districts end up being, and having the commissioners of said district to be the helper with that community council or the neighborhood council, that's a great idea. What I am having trouble with is I don't want to take anything, any recommendations from Iceland, thank you very much, or the United States of America, and we're Butte-Silver Bowl. And with that, the hierarchy of your neighborhood council and then your Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council, that's another, those are layers of bureaucracy. So I have to say that's what I believe them to be. And I'd rather just have neighborhood council to give information and have that direct information of the community and the folks that live in that neighborhood to the commissioner to help them make those decisions and what the priorities are. But my question then is, going back to your signature gathering, and I know that's a tough deal, so thank you for doing that, but you said that it was back in 2016. That was 9 years ago. I'm wondering if you've done any follow-up with those 447 folks. Do they still live here in Butte-Silver Bow? Do they still feel the same way? Because 9 years have passed, and that's a long time. I'm just curious.
Well, as you see, 1,000 people protested, but none of them are willing to come up here and say a word. I guess, where am I going? Repeat your question, please. I got to give them.
Sure. I'm sorry. Let me get a little closer to the mic.
Question.
Just the question. So you gathered 447 signatures back in 2016. Have you done any follow-up with that number? Because some folks have moved, maybe. 9 years is a long time. Any, may have changed their opinion, but I'm just kind of wanting that follow-up.
I agree with you. There has been a lot of change in our society since that survey was taken. Unfortunately, our society has become more polarized. No, I have not made any follow-up, but I have been working for 13 years trying to get this put into the charter because I am fully aware that people threw up their hands 4 years after we had a viable Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation functioning because there was not an official recognized channel of communication. And yes, actually you are right. they should be working through their commissioner. And the commissioner should be working through the chair of the council to your city manager and to the departments. So the commissioner is the person who should be following up. I don't want what we have now, thousands of individual citizens trying to go directly to the different departments and getting something done. That's what I tried to do. There was, yes, the Centerville group that did that. But since the instigator and ramrod of that Centerville group lost her husband, she hasn't done a thing. So that's why we need it in the charter. We need a functioning system. Ramsey did great, but when I talked to Peter, I think it was, I can't remember names, he says he's got the same problem. Nobody wants to do anything because there is not a recognized channel. And I'm not saying that they should go around the commissioner. I'm saying they have an organized system of working with their commissioner to move the issue forward. We had, the example, we had one project done after the $50 million or $50,000 study in the Greeley area. And I went as chair of the Greeley neighborhood to the CEO and to the community development director, and we did a survey and got what we needed to get some additional funding from the Department of Commerce from Montana, and we got one project done. But could you see if we had 5 or 10 different neighborhoods, community organizations within a community? And we have to have more than one, because the Greeley is across the tracks from the racetrack. If you don't understand what I'm saying, we live on that side of Grand, they live on the other side of Grand. We have specific issues and problems. They don't have the same issues and problems. So we dilute what we're trying to do if you mandate one community council for the entire district. It has to be a half a dozen or different. If you combine the districts, you're going to have a larger district. You're going to end up with maybe a half a dozen different neighborhood community councils, and it's going to take 10 years to get that far. But that goes back to your question. Are those people going to be willing to do something? They're the ones that have to first, as the gal said, we should have first formed the community neighborhood improvement councils and then did the $50,000 study. It has to come from the bottom up. Any more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Banderob. Any other questions from commission?
I'll be back.
I bet you will. I look forward to seeing you next week. I have a thought, Annie. In our review of other charters, Missoula has named community councils or neighborhood councils in there. I'm wondering if we could reach out to someone in Missoula regarding efficacy and structure. And specifically, I'm kind of thinking about that question that we've been wrestling with. Like, it seems that these councils are really effective when there's something seriously wrong and they like Ramsey, for example, they wanted something done and they're trying to work really hard. But then when it's day-to-day operations, they kind of wane. And you mentioned that, you know, getting people to volunteer is hard, and getting them to be volunteers for a little board can be difficult. So I just would like to get some information about from Missoula, and I think Helena also, you know, what they found in practice, you know, how they work, where their structural flaws might be. And I can follow up with you on email in terms of other questions that, you know, maybe the rest of the commission would want to chime into, that we might have somebody come present if we can get that happening. I know we're getting out of time and we're doing a lot of research, so if we can't make it happen, it's no problem. They could even answer an email if there was an opinion. But I think that would help us too. Okay. Right. Do you have another question, Mr. Banderob?
That is the point why it is important that we have the commissioners functioning as the coordinators, because the people understand that that is the way that you should go. And if they're there, that you can talk to them. We had commissioners show up at our meetings and we worked through them. I talked to the gal in Missoula 10 years ago, etc., when I was trying to get it through the first time. And she said it was a constant battle to keep it going. So that's why when we put it in the first time, we ended up with $100,000 management counter thing. And that's not the way to go. That's part of the problem, if you really want. Excuse me.
Mr. Thielen?
Yeah, it's a little bit off subject here, and Ed, I apologize, but I just received a text message from Mr. Woy, and when he discussed the using of the specialized software, he mentioned Northwestern Montana Power and Western Energy, and he was just wondering if those could be stricken from the record and just go ahead and correct it by saying utility engagement and not name the names.
In our notes we can, but this is live broadcast, so he is unfortunately on the record with those statements, but we can strike it out of notes.
I think that's all he's asking, so thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Banderob? If not, I'm going to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other scheduled matters. I guess just circling back to the beginning of this conversation, I will draft a hypothetical timeline of deliberations for us to consider, and then we can bring that back and have a kind of discussion about those priorities, and then add anything to that list that we'd like to deliberate, if that works for everybody. And then announcements will be meeting again next week on November 3rd. And then I don't think there's anything else for the good of the order. If I could ask Mr. Thielen to make a motion to adjourn. So Mr. Thielen has made a motion to adjourn, and Ms. Dolan has seconded. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you all. We'll see you next week. And those of you on party line, I'll be listening. Oh, we have a correction, Annie. Our next study commission is the 27th of October. Yeah, thank you. Because we were on that every other week, but we're going to be weekly. Just forget about it. We're never taking any breaks.